Welcome back to yet another tutorial, and we are proceeding with our Laravel series. And today what are we looking at? And before we look at what we are having today, in our last tutorial we looked at Laravel auth. We looked at how we can use a Laravel package known as Jetstream to ensure that we can have a login, a register, and password research. Okay, like the Laravel authentication mechanism is done using a package. Now today what are we covering? We are going to look at Laravel Seeders. Okay, there is something called a seeder, and I need to first explain what are seeders in Laravel, so that maybe before we can kickstart with our development, you can first of all understand seeders. Now, if you have been working on some systems, you're going to realize that there is that moment where you need to have some data seeded in your system. Like you need to have some data as mock data or as default data in your system. Now imagine you have created your system and you do not have any data in your system. Now you all know that if you create an account for the admin, it means that the admin do not register from the system, from the front end of the system. For example, you can't find a system where someone to register as an admin needs to come here, because now that means you're opening the entire system to the public. So it only means that in case you're an admin account, all you need to do is just to log in. But just imagine who creates that account first. So that's where now the Laravel Seeders comes in. Now a Laravel Seeder is just a class or a mechanism of inserting fake data or default data into your database. For example, you do love to see how data is going to be populated in your system. Instead of you manually coming here, for example, if I happen to want, for instance, I want to log in into the system, I need to first of all come here and I register, then I can use those credentials to log in. But with Laravel Seeders, you can just instead create an account in your system, which is like a default, so that you can always use that same account to ensure that you always check, or you can always access your system at any time. Now it's from that user account that you create as a default that you can be able now to create any other account. So that's what we mean by Laravel Seeder. So without wasting time, we are going to look at what a Laravel Seeder is. For example, if I access this system, and the project I'm proceeding with is what I covered in the last tutorial, and that was the Apex Auth, or what we call the authentication in Laravel, where we looked at the Jetstream package. So I just want to proceed with that project because I can use the same project just to showcase or to demo how we create Laravel Seeders. Now, you all know that by default, for us to be able to create anything, you need to first of all understand the architecture. I have already a tutorial which covers architecture of Laravel, but just to show you where we find seeders, there is a folder known as database. And now under this folder called database, there is another folder called what? Seeders. So by default, they give us our database seeder as the default file, which is there. And when you check it, you can see that we have something which tries to resemble a seeder, but we are going to create our own so that you can understand, and then you'll be able now to create any other seeder as the way you might wish. So this is where we're going to see all those files residing. So whenever you create a seeder, it will simply come to a folder known as database, and inside the database there is another subfolder known as seeders. So within here, that's where we're going to create our seeder. Now, since you have all known that for you to interact with your Laravel application, we always run commands. For example, you saw whenever we want to create a controller, we had to create a command. Whenever we wanted to create a migration, we created a command. Whenever we wanted to create a model, so it's all about creating commands. Now, even when we are creating seeders, we don't just create it manually. We run a command, and this is the command that we use to create a seeder. So there is a command known as php @sun. So we can always use php @sun, and now the command is just make and then this seeder. So we say make seeder, and then you define the class. Now remember, I said in all the tutorials I've been showing you, if without you forgetting your principles, or what we call object-oriented principles, there is that object-oriented principle of like classes, objects, blah blah blah. So now we're going to realize that whenever we are creating a class, for instance, if you can look closely to this, This one, it's a class, that's why you can see that it is capitalized for each first letter. For example, database, the D is capital and then this one. Now, since even here you want to create a seeder, and the seeder you want to create a user seeder so that you can have a default user who can log in into the system and accesses the system. So for example, when I come here, I'm going to say user seeder. You should be very vigilant. Look at how I'm creating my class. I'm calling it user seeder, but U is capital and S is capital. But the rest of these others are small letters. So that's how we create it. A command has all characters to be small letters, but the class name we assign to the file that we want to create should always be capitalized. When I say capitalized, it means each first letter of that word should be capital. So if we have user seeder, it has to be U and S. Then from there, I'll click on enter. So when I click on enter, you're going to see that they can even help me to know where has my file gone. Now, for me to access my file, I'll find it under Database Seeders and the User Seeder. Once I check here, you're going to see that my file is within here. You see, this is my file. So after you creating this file the way you have created it, now there is something important we have to do. Remember, we want to add some default data in our system, like the data. We want that we can run a command and we can find that data in the system. If I can first check before I do anything, maybe in our database, you're going to realize that there is a table, rather there is our database called Apex Auth. Now this database, we created it last time in the previous tutorial, and now by default when you create a Laravel application, it creates what we call a table known as users. Now this table by default, it comes as empty the way you're seeing it. Now whenever we have this, we can now create some data so that we can come and we check here and we can find that data, and we can use the same data to log in or to access our system. So when I come here, since I want to populate data within this table, I need to first of all understand what mechanism, what interacts with the database, what interacts with the tables. It's something known as a model. So there's no way I'm going to insert data in the database without me first of all importing the model. So you're going to come up here after line 6. So on your line 7, you need to import your model. What are we doing? We are trying to come here under there is a folder known as app, then there is another subfolder known as models. So we want to import this user model here so that now we can use that model to insert or to allow us insert data in the database. So how do we import that model? What's the line? So just use, I know by now at least you're familiar to something like this. So you say use app, then use backslash, then model. So it's models, then backslash, then user, then you terminate. Let me first disable this internet. I don't want it to auto complete for me. Now you see this line that I'm highlighting. We need it because there is no way we are going to insert data in the database without this. So we need to import this. By default, this is not imported when you're creating a seeder. It is only imported when we are creating migration models and controllers at once. But if we create a seeder separately, what we need to do first is to come here and we first import our model as user model. Now after importing the model, you need to come into this function. There's a function which is known as run. So inside this function called run on line 14, you must come in between here and you first remove this. So it's from this function that we are going to declare whatever we want it to be seeded in the database. So how do we do so? Now you can now call your user model. You call the user model and you add these two full colons. Now you see how I'm calling my user model. You should be mindful about how you're writing your code. Remember, U is capital because a model is a class, and a class must begin with with capital letter. So I'm calling this user model and I'm bundling it together with these two full colons. Now there is a function known as create. Now when you call the create, and since it's a function, you call it like this. After you calling it like this, you can terminate even at the end. After there, enter in between this function braces, the brackets, and then you add these square brackets and then you enter. Look at how I'm adding. there is this bracket which is the brace, then terminate at the end, enter inside the brackets and use now the square brackets, and then in between the square brackets, that's where you enter. So we want to declare our classes within here, rather our data, like that user account want to create. This is where we declare it from. Now after this, what we need to do next, we can now first of all go to there is a folder known as migration here, and then we look for that table. Now the table has what? It has all these fields, there are very many, but for us our concentration is going to just look at these two, because when we populate these two, the rest, most of them are nullable. Actually not only two, there should be three. There is this name, email, and then the password, because we shall need the name just to display that this is so and so, but we need more of the email and the password for us to be able to create the account which we shall use to access the system. So we are going to focus more on the password, on the email, and then the name. So when I come here, I'm going to say, okay, now in our table called user, the field I want to populate data with, I need to populate data with the name, yeah? But the name, of course, you must first of all put them in single quotes. Name, like that. Then you use this, yeah? Then you attach it with the name that you want to give. For example, maybe I want to give Mosh. Let me just say Mosh Apex. Mosh Apex, yeah? So I'm just calling this Mosh Apex. So I want that in the field of the name, if I can come here, I want within this column, this one, I want the name to be Mosh Apex. That's why you're seeing something like this. So we are saying name, and then we bind it with this data. Then from here you put just a comma, not a termination, put a comma, then you enter. Then you call another field which is the email, yeah? Then the email is going to be still single quotes, Mosh Apex at gmail.com, yeah? Then you put also a comma. Then what is left is the password. So you're going to call your password, yeah? Then come here, this. Then now there's something that we need to understand. Remember, whenever you're creating any system, be it in Laravel or in any other framework, we know very well that security is something very key. And one of the ways how Laravel, because one of the features of Laravel is one of the most secure frameworks on earth. Now, how does Laravel enforce security? Now, by default, all its passwords must be encrypted. And what do we mean by encrypted? Now, when we want to achieve encryption in Laravel, mostly for the password or for that sensitive data that you want to encrypt, that we use something called a hash. There is a class known as a hash which can help us to encrypt data, like to change the characters of the password you're putting so that the system does not see it. For example, if the password is, let's say, Mosh 2020 or maybe Apex at 2026, it means that someone can easily see it. For example, if it's an admin or whatever user, he can see that actual data. Now, how do we ensure that this password is not seen? Even the admin, even the super admin cannot know your password. How do we do that? We shall come up here still after line 7. We shall now go to line 8, and then we import a certain class that can help us now give us a function known as hash. Now, how do we import it? Use the use, and then from the use, there's something called illuminate. Illuminate. I remember someone read this one as Illuminate, and at some point they were asking me whether I joined, I subscribed. No, this is called Illuminate, not Illuminate. So I use Illuminate, then / support. Then from there I use something called a facade. Yeah, a facade. Then actually it's facades. Then from there I call now the class which I want to use, which is the hash. Yeah, so this is how we import. You see, we say import. Now instead in Laravel we don't use the word import, we say use. It is equivalent to import. Then what are we importing? Then we point to this class called illuminate. As you can see, even up here they are giving you some of the samples, because by default if we want to use this without event or Laravel Seeders, we use this illuminate, then / support. Now this is like pointing at a certain library and we want to pick its class, so we pass through all this all away from this to support to facades. Then you call the hash. Now we are going to use this hash class here at the password, and then we shall say hash. Remember, it's a class, then hash, then this forward, rather full colons, then from full colons you use the word make. Then make is a function, and then here you can now put your comma. Now inside the make, that's where we're going to declare our, so we are calling it Apex at 2026. Now look, this is how we have created it. Yeah, we have said the password, we want it to be encrypted, but before we can use any encryption method, we need to call its class, and one of the class we use in Laravel to encrypt data is known as the hash. Now after hash, you add what we call two double full colons, and you call its function known as make. And now this one, it's going to make our password. The way you're seeing it here, Apex at 2026, instead of seeing it like this data is going to be encrypted. Now after you're done with this, what you're going to do next is just simply to save. So now this is our account that we have created, and how we have created it, we have ensured that we are using a model which is now a user model, and we use a function called the create, and then we declare the attributes or the data that we want to be populated within this table. That's what we have done. Now after this, after you are editing your UserSeeder, there is the last step you have to do. And what's that step? We need to import this file from here, so that now it can be among the database seeders. Now there is this default file which comes along here, which is called the database seeder. Yeah, so we need to register for any other additional file that you create. You must always register it here, so that now we can use a command to run it, and it can add or populate our data in the system. So we call it registering seeder in the database seeder. So whenever you create any seeder file, it might not only be user seeder, it can be student seeder, tutor seeder, or lecturer seeder, or program seeder, or category seeder, or product seeder. So whenever you create, even if we shall have like 1,000 of the seeders that we have created, we must all be for them to run, they must be all declared within this database seeder or registered. So what do? We just come inside this function called run, and we first remove this dummy data. We remove it, but mind about how you're removing. You must ensure that you leave these last two. We are only removing this, and then after you removing that, what do we do next? We now call the actual method that helps us to register all seeders that we shall have created. So how do we do so? We use the $sign this, then you use this. Now you use there is a method known as call, then you can even terminate at the end. Now you enter in between here under this function and use the square brackets, and then you enter. Look, so we are using this, yeah. Then this is attached to a call method. Then inside the call method, that's where we're going to register all our seeders. So moving forward, we shall now be registering, let's say, the user seeder here. User seeder, then this, then you say this is a class. Then you can put a comma. So in case we had more others, we can now add, for example, maybe we had the student seeder, we could say student seeder, then dash class, like this. So you can even add more. Maybe in case you add, let's say, lecturer seeder, you could do the same. But since right now we only have one seeder, which is the user seeder, we are going now to remove this, and then we only remain with that seeder. But you can put a comma at the end, because comma means you can add as many other seeders as you want. That's how we register. So we have now been successful at creating a seeder, which is this, and we have populated some data there. Now we can now see that we have now fully registered it here. So what is left for us to see the results? We need now to run a certain command. There is a command we need to run to ensure that now we can see this data in our system. How do we run this command? Now there's a command known as php artisan. Now there is something called migrate. We have already seen this migrate in our previous tutorials. But now this time round, migration means that you're updating tables or fields in the database. Yeah, in case you have created a new table, or you have tampered with the table fields, or you have changed something in the migration here, what you do, you just say php artisan migrate. But since this time round, we want it to migrate and even populate data within that table, there is something called migrate. Then add this full colon, use the word fresh, then space -- seed. Now what does this mean? we are going to run a new or fresh migration, so that in case we have updated anything in our tables, we are going to first of all achieve those changes. Now from there, after you wiping and removing the old tables and re-update them with the new tables, after that you must put --seed. Now --seed, that's the command that is going to help us add this data that we have added under this. To populate this data to be seen within this, we must run this command called php artisan migrate fresh --seed. Then from there you enter. Now when everything is okay, make sure that your XAMPP is running. By now I can't be telling you to run your XAMPP because I know that those are the steps that you know. Now if your XAMPP is running very fine, that's when you should run this command php artisan migrate fresh, then this seed. Now what has happened, if I can maybe increase the terminal a bit, you're going to realize that what it did first, one, it dropped all the tables. So whenever you want to update and you want to remove all the data, and be mindful, we don't run this command always. We only run it if we are very sure that we no longer want the old data or anything we have added there. That's why we run migrate and then we seed. So it drops all the existing tables and it recreates them again. Then from there, after recreating them, you can see this, the way they were run, this. Then from there, you can now see after doing that, it went ahead into this database seeder and it ran even the seeders. By running seeder, it means it was trying to populate this data. When you look this account, the details that we are seeing here, if we happen to go back to our table in the database, we can now refresh this and we can see some data. Now you see we have already populated this. But what is so important, look at the password field. When you check our code, the password, if I can now reduce this a bit, the password is called Apex at 2026. But when you come to the field here, look at how it has been encrypted. You can't even tell that this is Apex 2026, you see? But this one has like 60 characters. You cannot, even the super admin cannot guess your password. That's how we create it. But now, after you knowing that you have now been successful, so if we wanted to add more, you just simply come here and you can just simply copy this, yeah, copy it, and then you can even paste it down, and then you can now change these fields to any other name. But for now, I just wanted to just use one, and I will just leave it at that. So I just created this, and now what is so surprising is that after you creating this user, you can even use the same details to log into the system. For example, let me first of all refresh my system and I come to the login page. Yeah, when I come to the login page, I'm going to simply just come here and I pick these details. I will just pick the email, which is this. I replace it with this. Then the password, I'm going to say it was Apex. Oh, first of all. Oh, sorry, this. Then password is Apex at 2026. Then let me try to log in. Now you're going to realize that when you log in, yeah, when you use those details, you can see that you can now even access your system. The name is here, the profile, the what. Why? Because by default with Laravel, the user that we create here, as I said, if we want to access the system for the first time, we need to create a user account, which is like the mock data or the default data, so that we can now use this account to now access the system and then be able to create any other account. Now in production, after you accessing your system and create other accounts, you can now remove that seeded data in case you want it. So yeah, so that's what we had. Just that in this tutorial I wanted us to look at the seeders and how useful they are. I know by the time you heard about seeders, you thought about something different. You might have thought about maybe if you're coming from the village, these seeds, maybe it meant that. But in Laravel, seeders means how do you populate some dummy data or mock data or the default data into your database without you going to the front end and then you start creating. So that's how we have been able to use our Laravel Seeders. And yes, let's catch up in our next tutorial. And in our next tutorial, we shall be looking at Laravel roles and permission, where we shall talk about the Laravel party package. Thank you so much and keep following. And